Hey guys, it's Fox again from Martial Arts and Philosophy, and today I'm going to discuss with you a competing moral theory to Kant, and that is utilitarianism. So last time we talked about the categorical imperative, which if you haven't seen the previous video, you can check it out. But the basic idea is that we can found morality in respecting persons. However, the utilitarians have found what they think is a deeper moral truth, which is that we should always maximize pleasure and minimize pain. They believe that in doing so, we will be acting morally good, or the only morally good thing to do is the action that maximizes pleasure and minimizes pain. For the utilitarian, happiness and pleasure are the same thing. And I think this has some sort of appeal to it, but you'll see that when we discuss other moral theories like Aristotle's virtue ethics, that happiness and pleasure don't necessarily have to be equal. They can mean different things. But for utilitarians, happiness is pleasure. So, at first glance, this seems like a pretty good moral theory. I mean, we're going to be making the world a better place if we're always trying to look out for, making people's lives as pleasurable as possible and eliminating all of the things that cause us suffering, but it's actually going to run into some pretty serious problems pretty quickly. So the first major problem is going to be that it doesn't respect persons like Kant's moral theory does. And that's not a problem because it goes against Kant's moral theory, but because of some of the consequences that you get when you don't have that as a foundational principle, which I'll illustrate now. So I'm going to examine a case where you have a homeless person that comes into a hospital and he has no family, and the doctor is going to put him under to do some kind of surgery on him so that he can survive. However, in the same hospital, we have three other people who have, let's say large families, and they live nice lives, and they're very productive members of society. Let's say one is a lawyer, and one is a doctor, famous heart surgeon, and I don't know, the other one's a soldier. A famous admiral or general. If you follow the utilitarian doctrine, it might begin to look good to you as the surgeon to remove this poor homeless man's organs and reinsert them into these other patients that need it. Say they're going to die if they don't get it. In order to maximize pleasure, we would want to perpetuate 3 lives instead of 1. That's going to increase our chances that we're going to maximize pleasure, especially since these lives are going to probably be happier lives. I mean, with the homeless man, if we restore him to health, we put him back out on the street, and we don't do anything else for him, then he's probably going to live a moderately miserable life. Whereas if we put the organs into these 3 other people, not only are they going to live healthy lives and happy lives, but let's say like the heart surgeon might save more people, and we're just going to continue to maximize pleasure that way. So yeah, let's take the homeless black guy's organs and put them into these other bodies. That seems wrong and terrifying. If you can imagine going to the hospital, and every time you go to the hospital you have to worry about somebody stealing your organs and putting them to other people, that's mortifying. I don't think we want to live in a society like that, and I think that's a very serious flaw for this theory. However, some utilitarians would argue that the very fact that we would not want to go to hospitals, if that were the case, would refute this kind of argument. They could say, if we make this a rule, basically, then we're going to have some serious issues because people aren't going to want to go to hospitals. And at the end of the day, we might save these 3 people, and that might be good, but in the end, it's not going to be good for society because if people are afraid of hospitals, it's going to cause more pain, and we're going to, not be maximizing pleasure anymore. This argument, however, just kind of brings up some other problems for the theory, I think. And that is that we're not very good at predicting future events, and if we're relying on the good of a situation to be determined by what we choose, then this might lead us to some problems. For example, what if in this hospital instance, we kept everything hush-hush, right? We made sure that it never got out of the hospital, right? We killed the homeless man, we took his organs, we put it into these 3 other people, thereby maximizing pleasure, minimizing pain. No one was the wiser. First of all, that seems wrong. However, say we predicted that and we did that as good utilitarians, and word did get out. And it did lead to people fearing hospitals, and it did lead to more maximization of, less maximization of pleasure and more pain for people because they couldn't go to hospitals without fear for their lives. We would have made the wrong decision even in this kind of distorted moral choice. So there you have it. That's utilitarianism in a nutshell and a couple criticisms. Next time what I'd like to do is offer up a particularly controversial moral situation, which is the bombing of Hiroshima, and see how Kantians would deal with it versus how utilitarians would deal with the situation. And I think this will better let you see how moral theory can be applied and which side makes more sense in application, which might be different than just seeing it in theory. So that's what we're going to do next time. But for now, what I'd like to ask is, what do you think? Do you think utilitarianism could be saved against the kind of criticisms that I've launched against it? Is it worth saving? Or are you with Kant so far? Or perhaps we'd be better off just looking elsewhere entirely at other moral theories, which we will get to soon enough.